Hey everyone, it's Will, GamerDad, with another video for you. So in today's video, we're going to go over Suzette as her Star Awakened 5-star form. And of course, I'll do a little bit of gameplay and let you know what I think about her. But the most important question of all is she hot or not? Now, don't tell Gamer Mom because she's not here right now, but you know what? Suzette can give Gamer Mom a run for her money. I mean, she's my alternate waifu. She's hot. She's the princess of the netherworld. And I mean, look at her hair and her style. Yup. Don't forget, when you do have Stellar Awakened abilities, you also can listen to all the extra voice lines that you get otherwise. So we have quite a few new voice lines for Suzette. So for those like myself who really enjoy the voice lines, I mean, that might push you over the edge either to summon for her directly or to Star Awaken her using the traditional methods such as buying style-specific star charts. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. Alright, so let's go over all her abilities, and there are a ton of new abilities, all of which are extremely powerful. I would say that some are more useful than others, but no matter what, she's a very well-rounded unit. So of course, you still have her level 3 VC, power and int plus 30% for 2 turns with her VC Grasta. I wouldn't say she's very useful in the VC front. However, it is still there if you want to use VC to help, especially in the earlier game when you might need that extra boost. I can't imagine if you have a Star Awakened Suzette that you'll have any trouble clearing main story content or whatnot. Okay, so keep in mind that I do have 125 light Suzette over the years of hitting her multiple times and having put some light items into her in the early days. When she has her Stellar Burst, when the Stellar Burst gauge is higher in light power, you're also going to get Pierce Resist of all enemies 50% for end of turn. What that means is that sometimes the kind of shadow can kind of even out at 50% as opposed to you getting more light gauge built up. And you can actually help offset that because she actually charges more when you hit against weak points. For the sake of this video, I actually didn't fight any fights that were vulnerable to wind. However, you can definitely experiment with that on your own. I tried some different team comms. Hopefully, that'll give you some ideas of how to utilize her. Now, the interesting part is that at the battle start, stack Ancient Despair on all party members in front and inflict poison and pain on all enemies for 3 turns, ignore target resistance. If you've used units such as ES Iska or even ES Sukiya, you know how powerful it is to apply pain and poison ahead of time. That means all your pain and poison Grasta will be active right off the bat. You won't need an additional unit to help power that. She can do that for you, and that's even before applying things like Demonic Thrust. Alright. Okay, let's get into her skills directly. Now, I reviewed this a little bit earlier. However, some moves of note, Sonic Lance. This one now gives party members first strike for 3 turns. And what that means is that if you activate it either in the EF or if you equip Falcon Grasta on Suzette, then she will give everyone first strike, which means essentially preemptive for 3 turns for your entire party. You can use that to, for example, farm unit enemies where they run away fast, like those mini mice or whatever in the Spectre Palace, or, for example, against super boss fights where they may have a preemptive move ahead of time. We also do have her Demonic Thrust, which is obviously her main 5-star move. Now, it does give dual power and int 40% down for 5 turns, and if you haven't already inflicted poison and pain at the start of battle with her in front line, you can now re-inflict Mega Poison and Pain, which is persistent for the entire battle and ignores target resistance and inflicts break. Now that means that she can set up major DPS, since this is preemptive, ahead of time with useful one target units such as Aya Cynthia, since they both play very well in wind type teams. There are other small moves. I wouldn't say they're very useful. The double thrust is interesting. It can deploy wind stance. I'm not sure you'd actually use one of your 4 moves towards this one. Maybe early in the game when you don't need as much tight DPS checks, you can use that. However, I actually found her other main stellar move much more useful to set wind zone. Now, there is a downside to that, and let me explain that shortly. This one does preemptively deploy wind zone attacks at the same time, ignores target defenses, crit damage increase, so make sure you have a crit setter, or in my case, using an Elpis weapon instead of her personal weapon. That will do the best for making sure she has maximum damage. It also consumes 1 Ancient Despair from all party members to increase strength times 4. That means that, remember, at the beginning of battle, she does start with 1 Ancient Despair for every unit in the front line, which is like every unit will have 1, including herself, which is a total of 4. It'll consume all of it. Now, the fun part is, in Stellar Burst, you can not only deploy Enhanced Wind Zone, it actually dispels or breaks any zone active, which is quite amazing. One of the few units that can do that. The other one being A.S. Hardy, and let's be honest, A.S. Hardy is not nearly as meta nowadays. It also does even more damage, and it hits 5 times, and it's barrier piercing. So for those who don't have a Cesta, this is a great alternative, being that the mod is extremely high, as well as being able to do all these things. And keep in mind that if you consume all Ancient Despairs at the same time, then it will do a ton of damage, up to 16 times damage with just 4 stacks. So the downside to using this move to set your zone instead of using the other one is that you will consume at least 1 Ancient Despair from all your party members. That means that your Bolt of Bahamut will be weaker if you activate it this way to set zone, unless you use this kind of mid-battle, in which case you'll have all your stacks ability. So keep that in mind. Now, the other thing to make note is that Dragon Cell has also gotten a lot more powerful. This one still relies on Poison or Pain, but you have both anyways, either through Demonic Thrust or through the alternate start of battle, which, by the way, the Poison and Pain does last only 3 turns. It's not for the whole battle, whereas the other one, which is Demonic Thrust, lasts for the entire battle. So keep that in mind. There are battles that last more than 3 turns, in which case you do have to reapply if you want to have the advantage of having those Pain Grasses out there. This one still does stack Wind type attack to the maximum of 100%, which is 50, 75, then 100. And this one does guarantee critical. So for those who are newer to the game, who don't have access to the Elpis weapons or Void weapons, or don't have a crit setter, she will still be able to do guaranteed crit damage with Dragon Assault, although the Bolt of Bahamut, which is her stellar move, is not guaranteed crit unless you have a crit setter right. Alright, grass test setup. You already know what's up. You can use the standard Grasta MP consumption, Bullseye. Now, I left this one in from my previous battle, but I would normally have Pain Adversity here for enemy numbers. And of course, True VC Grasta for the power and endurance times 15. Or plus 15. Also, remember that with, the other styles, they do add stats to the other version. So for example, you can see completion reward of the AS does give crit rate to the Dragoon plus 5%. And likewise, if you go with the Lucifer version, it gives Dragoon plus 10 speed. So if you have access to all 3 versions, make sure you can get that to maximize her stats out there. You can also see that this is only in level 80. It's not even fully powered. I just got this last night, of course, and haven't run any dungeons or used any XP scrolls, because it does take over 2,000 scrolls in order to get there. I'm not going to do that at this video because I just want to slowly grind it up, but I just want to demonstrate also, you don't have to rush all the way to 100. From my experiences with Aldo, even a 20 level difference only adds a small amount of stats to your unit, in which case it does help a little bit, but the level 80 is already extremely powerful. One last thing of note, here's her board as usual. And of course, being that this is an SA unit, you have red stars instead of the normal gold stars. Take a note at her personalities as well. Very, very useful for gathering Grasta Sharers, Sweet Tooth, Lance, Lost Laboratory, and Wind. Alright, let's take her out for a spin. In this case, I'm actually not going to be taking any, mobs. We're going to go directly into some various boss fights. Alright, so in our first example, we're going to take on a very, very old boss. This one is vulnerable and weak to wind. And so I wanted to demonstrate her breakability and also the amount of charge that she gets in her stellar gauge. You can see that our light is building quite quickly and there's no shadow showing up, which is the purple stuff. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to use her demonic thrust to set up the break. And then it is preemptive, and our next fastest unit will be Cynthia AS, in which case it'll take advantage of that break in order to do double damage and end the fight right here and there. Of course, there are many ways to do a lot of damage, but in this case, again, just to demonstrate one of Suzette's many abilities. Also note that in this fight, we are using her as a wind zone setter using her Bahamut move right off the bat. So it is quite nice. If we are not using her as a main DPS, you can use her as a zone setter, or if you really want to equip the other 4-star move to set the zone, you can do so at your own peril of missing out on another slot for a much needed other move. But that being said, lots of customization to be had here. Alright, so let's have some real fun now. Remember the twins? This one, again, for those who don't know, I spent over 40 hours battling this darned thing, and at the time, extremely difficult, not any shared Grasta, units were limited in DPS, and so on and so forth. Now, we have a Stellar Awakened Suzette, and keep in mind, we have no sidekicks. This is a true solo fight. No benefits, no Grasta Sharers, nothing at all, just Suzette spamming and spamming and spamming and winning. So if you are afraid of the twins and haven't taken this one down after the P5 second, collab, make sure you come back to Luke Vina and take it down. It's near the top of the village and there's an exclamation mark. At this point, all we had to do is press a couple of buttons, which is essentially just the Dragon Assault. Now in this case, we did use the AF at this point to press the Bahamut move, which not only did tons of damage, it did also activate Wind Zone right off the bat. Now keep in mind that we didn't have a full stellar gauge, and so we don't get the benefit of having a Dispel plus reawakened Wind Zone, but even normal Wind Zone just adds another 50% damage to all your wind units, including her, and it is nice that it is activated first. Now, I did also apply Sonic Lance, which gives me first strike for the next 3 turns, just in case the twins are too fast and we are worried about anything. We now have also preemptive on our table as well. So this is just a nice fun demonstration that power creep really has gotten real. This boss was insane, very, very difficult. We have to watch the pixels in order to find where the HP stoppers are. And in this case, now we don't have to. We use an Elpis weapon, we press Dragon Assault and just press Dragon Assault and just press Dragon Assault. There are no AS other than the third one. The button pressing is very easy, and that's pretty much it. So keep in mind that if you are relying on using the Bahamut Stellar move, Elpis Spear or Avoid Lance will be your best bet because it does have guaranteed crit setting as opposed to her soloing things by herself. If you are using Dragon Assault as your main DPS, then you don't necessarily need a guaranteed crit weapon. You probably have other crit setters on your team. Now in our next example, we're going to have some fun with both Star Awakened Aldo as well as Stellar Awakened Suzette and show the interaction between the two of them. We're also bringing back some fun teams with our Melissa-led team. This is our first global unit a couple years ago. At the time she was broken, I made a big video and talking how cheap and broken she is. And now, even though she is not nearly as good, she is still very able to apply Flash Strike stats, so we can just keep on doing tons and tons of damage. Remember that any Flash Strike stance user can tie in units of different weapon types and abilities and elements, and they each charge the hit of the AF gauge by 10%, allowing you to have a large, long first turn AF. And don't forget that Flash Strike stance also gives 30% extra damage for the turn that is active. At the end of the first turn, then the Flash Strike stance does disappear, so that is unfortunate, but that's all we needed really. I mean, we're doing not essentially 800 million, not too bad considering the enemy does have innate 90% type res shield up. And note we only have a little bit of type res down. Now the fun begins when we have a full stellar gauge awaken. You actually can activate both of them together. Now in terms of the timing, not sure which one lands first or why it lands first, but it's funny because I guess it's based on the animation speed, in which case it takes time to break the zone, which is dispel the active defensive zone and reapply your wind zone. And in the meantime, we have a good timing of auto applying his attack, Starmore Slash, and then we finish up with the Bahamut Rain of Lances all the way down. That was very, very, very fun. I love the name Bahamut. Reminds me of Final Fantasy, actually, with all the moves. That was one of the big summonings, I think, from Final Fantasy VII, where you can just kind of summon those really powerful dragons to do all the damage for you. In this case, I mean, so that's essentially as powerful as that. And besides, she does have that signature move, Dragon Assault. Okay, so in our next example, we do have an older warped boss. This one is vulnerable to Pierce and Wind. It does null or absorb Earth. Even so, we do have Ultra Tuva on this team because Ultra Tuva does give everyone Overthrow in an Awakened Zone. And remember that Overthrow, just like the Elpis Lance, does give you extra boosts against enemies stronger than you. And of course, these question mark levels are much higher in strength than you, especially at the level 80. Even at level 100, I believe the bosses are at least level 140 or so. In which case, we can do a one-turn AF. And this does demonstrate how useful Suzette can be as a mainline DPS, even in Pierce teams, not only in Wind teams. Of course, she is finding a big home in Wind teams because she can set Awakened Zone, but even in Pierce teams, no slouch, tons of damage, and can carry most Pierce teams on her own. Other than that, it's just just to show that not only does she have that main damage, remember that the Stellar Awaken move is essentially an extra move that you can do before any turn, which essentially allows you an extra turn for free, because usually the Stellar move is enough to bring down 1 HP stopper or 1 full HP bar on its own without any assistance from anyone else, because you've already probably applied a lot of buffs and debuffs on your team before the end of the first turn AF. Other than that, we can just keep on spamming our attacks. The great thing is that AS Yukino does give us Pierce resist down as well as type res down, which does benefit both of Suzette's abilities. And like I said, we can demonstrate that you can activate the Stellar move before the start of your turn. And so technically, if you have an AF, you can press the Stellar move first, do some damage, and then AF right after that. Also, remember that you don't necessarily have to activate her Bolt of Bahamut. You can choose to activate just Dragon Assault, just in case you want to leave, for example, this enhanced Pierce zone in play instead. So, for example, if you don't want to dispel your existing zone, or you want to save the zone that you have up because it's just beneficial for you, you can actually do that as well. So remember that Stellar Awaken, you don't have to choose the Stellar move, you can choose the other moves, and of course, why wouldn't you choose Dragon Assault? That's her next best DPS mode, and it's very constant damage, especially after the third stack, giving herself 100% wind type damage up. Normal Grasta here. Again, standard Grasper for all DPS, just in case you're wondering, is always the MP consumption, bullseye, as well as adversity. I guess with bosses that are just by themselves, you don't have to use adversity. You can use pain setting Grasta or weak point Grasta, for example, if you're fighting an enemy who's weak to wind. But in the case of neutral damage here, probably doesn't do much difference. Any pain Grasta or even agony Grasta will do benefit for you. On another note, like I said with the voicing, after you take a nap, there you go. She has the voicing And that is very, very nice benefit when you're using her on your team. For another note, every time you put her into your team, she'll also have another line as well. So it kind of is quite nice to have those Stellar Awakened units. You'll hear extra voice lines and so on and so forth when interacting with the world. Okay, in our next example, we are fighting an SD-148. This is a really tough one, and of course, you can just use Sesta, being Sesta is already strong enough to kind of take it down on its own. For some reason, I wasn't able to fully kill this in one turn, and I'm not sure why that was the case. I remember before I was able to one-shot this, but maybe that's not the case. Probably a Grasta setup because we're sharing Grasta boosting with Suzette as well as Sesta. So keep in mind that if you are having 2 DPS in this case, although they both work well in synergy with each other, then you only have, if you have 2 Grasta characters, you can see one in the back for each unit. Hiro does carry Lost Lab as well as Sweet Tooth, and Yuri does carry Katana Grasta. By having that, you do lose a little bit of synergy in one sense. On the other hand, you can bring down the boss quite easily. Now, the main reason why I wanted to demonstrate this specific one is, again, you can see that the light gauge is only about 50% full, so you won't get that pierce resistance down when you activate the Stellar move, either within or outside AF. But another perfect example of how the synergy of Suzette works with powerful units such as Sesta. You can now dispel the earth, reawaken with wind, and then do tons of damage with the Bolt of Bahamut. And now you have a reawakened wind zone, so that the start of next turn, Sesta will now get her Sesta Twin Blade Wolf stack and start winning the fight for you. Not to mention, don't forget the Bolt of Bahamut does have Barrier Pierce. So now you have 2 Barrier Pierce units on your win team if you happen to need both Barrier Pierces, each of them doing a ton of damage. And the great synergy about that is that, remember that Suzette can boost only her own type damage? You got power and int and speed boosting from Sesta, which is very, very nice, as well as having wind res down applied to the enemy with Sesta's 5-move hit combo, which is unsurpassed on a wind DPS. It only goes to show that obviously Stellar Awakened units are extremely powerful, but even older Gacha units can do extremely well, being that there really isn't anyone else like Sesta just yet. Again, boss has 50 hit shield, so we can't do much about that. We're just going to land as many hits we can, wear it down, and of course, since the boss doesn't have much of anything, you can just activate Twin Blade Wolf just as usual near the end of the AF, and you're going to get all the hits in and do tons of damage and finish the fight. That's only if you can't win normally, right? There you go. Bam! So nice and fun, not too difficult obviously, and I didn't mention this earlier, but don't forget, with a defensive team like this, you already have 1 slot spared up because Suzette can do everything with her 4 move slots if you have a 120. You can have a zone setter. You can have debuff power int. You can have a pain and poison setter. You can have main DPS. You can even break zone. I mean, that in itself is great. And of course, you can apply first strike, which is preemptive for your whole team. And you just have to customize the moves as you see fit, depending on what works best for those fights. Again, I mean, if you're wondering about walking around with, fighting mobs and stuff, she doesn't have an MP 0. So, I mean, she doesn't have a farming move, but if you have another MP 0 unit on your team, I'm sure that will do more than enough. So, in conclusion, Suzette's going to be Suzette, WFS's love child, my lover, aka waifu. Shh, don't tell Gamer Mom. And she will not disappoint. I also do love, as usual, the Stellar Awakening background, but mainly, I mean, my waifu just got a lot better, and she's going to be a powerful unit for many months to come. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.